Hello, welcome back. I was saying in the last video about I've done the carburetors and that was done on this. Well, this video I'm going to be doing putting in new wheel bearings in the front wheel of my ZRX wheel. Now I've already took them out, but I'll give you a few little tips and hints on how I actually get them out, because it's not always as simple as what it seems to be. You think it'll be easy, knock it through, or not, but not really, because you have a wheel bearing on one side, a wheel bearing on the other side. Now these are the old ones, they're very gritty, certainly not what I want. But in the middle you have a tube that sits on the inner part of the wheel bearing tightly, and then the shaft goes through that. Now how do you get from one side to knock the outer part of the bearing with that in the way? Well, what I do is I try and knock it slightly to one side. If you look at the way that would be like that, try and knock it to one side a little bit, because it will go a little bit, and then a hit, unfortunately it'll be the inner part of it to start it off. Once it moves a bit, you can move this a bit further, and then you should be able to get, actually I managed to move this so it fell out actually inside the wheel. So then you can hit then the inner part all the way out. Now once you've got one out one side, or once you've got it part out, you can get grips on the inside that put it out, and I'll show you what they look like. I've got a set here. I've got a set of these. What they do, this inner bit, so unscrew it back because it's all the way in at the moment. These three legs will go, sorry, I've been looking a bit too low, will go on the inside of the bearing. Right, and then as you tighten up this bit, it pushes the legs out, and then the bearing can't come off. And then you tighten this bit, which there against the, because that'll be in the wheel like that, and then you tighten this bit, which then draws the bearing out, and these two push on the side of the wheel. So once you've got it so far out and you can just get enough to get these out, these grips in, where you need them in is just to get to grip it like that. So you need about that much space without losing it. All you need is about that much to be able to get these in to pull the bearing out, and then you can do the other side dead easy with this. Now if it pulls out the inner bit, then you've got a bit of a job then trying to knock it out manually, but luckily enough these come out okay. But on this bike, putting them in, you have to do them in a particular way. And the wheel, you see, is this one has a stop on the inside. See, so you put this bearing in this side first, and hit and tap it right away until it comes to the end and stops. Can't go any further. And then once you've done that, you put the tube in the other way, and then you can knock this bearing in as far as you can. I just noticed I've got a little bit of damage there I've got to sort out, because then it won't go any further, because the tube which is in there stopping it from going any further. But if you try and put this side in first, you can knock this side all the way through, and then it'll fall inside or too far. And then once you've got this bit in, you've got a retaining clip. You've got the speedo drive, and then it looks like a retaining clip on this side to retain it all in. But anyway, I crack on, and you've got a seal on the other side. But I crack on, and we'll go from there. Right, I'm going to be putting this bearing in this side first, what I showed you. Now, you've got to try and knock it in as square as possible, because if you go in skew, you can jam it and you can damage the alloy. The bearing's quite tough, but the alloy. So what I managed to get, an old crash bung, right, is almost the perfect size to fit around that bearing. And with it being plastic, it won't damage the bearing, but they are quite tough. A lot of people use, like, you can use a socket, but you've got to make sure the socket goes around the outer race all the way around and not go anywhere on the rubber, because otherwise you'll push the ball bearings out or damage them inside, so they actually don't move freely. So I'm going to put that there. I've got my trusty proper knocker, and I may go skewy for a little bit, but as long as I don't go too far. Keep checking which side needs it. Right, that's got it in so far now. Now I'll go around with a socket now and get a socket to push it all the way to the base. So now I know that's in square, I can be quite sure to get a socket, the biggest socket I can get that will fit inside there to do that job. So I'll get the socket. Right, bearings in. Now, I couldn't find a socket that was big enough to go right around the outer edge. A 32 was a bit too small, 34 was too big. So I had to be very carefully use my trusty drift, which is an old extension lead, obviously, extension bar, and carefully tap it, or when you go further down, a bit more than a tap. One side a little bit, the other side a little bit, a little bit, and then alternate the ears as well, and do it very, very carefully. And then when the tone changes, that's when you pretty much I've got to the stop, because you can, well, yeah, it's like a solid knock, that. So I am actually there. Bearing's fine. Just tested it now, no problem at all. This side we have a seal, an oil seal that goes in on this side, because also on this side you have one of these go in, which is a spacer between the wheel and the oofa doofa. Right, okay, I'm going to get cracking on the other side and speak to you again shortly. Right, bearing is in. Next part is in this side, you have this little device goes in, which is like almost like your speedo drive type thing, this sits on it, locates where the locating thingies are, which is there and there, and when the wheel turns, the speed cable will turn. Once I've got it located correctly, there you go, it's going slowly. Which side's the camera? Going slowly. Right, so that's going to go in next, like that, like so. And then you've got a circlip or a snap ring, as some people call them, or sometimes they call them, which then goes over the top and in. It's not quite in, give it a push, there you go, it's in. That's not coming out now, so that's jobs are good on that. So this will go on as a space through between the wheel. Obviously got to put disc on, which I'll put this side disc on next, and then the other side we've got a seal and the discs to go on. Hi, well, I've got the discs out, and when I took them off, I labelled them left and right. Now it doesn't particularly matter in this instance because I'm changing the pads. Now if you kept the same pads in and you took the discs off for any reason, the pads will generally wear to the type of disc. Now if you swap the discs over, and mixed them up the other way around, then what could happen is it'll take time to bed in again, because the wear weight rate, it might be slightly different from one to the other. These are pretty good, not too bad, but obviously there's always a bit of wear on them. So I've got left and right written on them, but as I say, in this instance I didn't need to. Now once you took the wheel off and you're thinking, well, which way is left and right, what I always find is if you put it up towards your bike and you know which side the speedo cable's coming from, then you can tell the difference. But also, if the tire's been put on correctly, it'll have an arrow on it pointing the rotation. It's there. So the rotation is that way, so the wheel will travel that way. So that means this side would be the left side and this side would be the right side. So I'm going to put the left side one on first, and there's only one way. You don't put it on that way because your disc isn't too far. That way around, you always have it where you've got it's got the minimum thickness 4.5 mil written on them, and sometimes you have the logo over the bike or whatever, depending if they're aftermarket or not. Now these are thread locked in with red thread lock. I've got the original bolts here, which I'm going to use the original bolts to put them back in, and I'm going to put red thread lock in. Now I've just looked in the manual. The manual says it's 27 Newton meters on the torque as well. So I'm going to do that on this side, and I'll do it on the other side, and I'll show you the seal that needs to go in. And I think that's it really for the wheel then. It's just a matter of assembling it all back together. Now I'm waiting for pads for this at the moment. So I've got the calipers already. I've got the braided lines there, which are the original ones on. They all seem fine. The master cylinder is all done, so I can put it all together, but I can't bleed it through until I've got the pads, because if you try to, pistons will push out, then you may push a piston completely out, fluid everywhere, and also you wouldn't be able to get the pads back in. You have to push pistons back. But anyway, hopefully they'll be here tomorrow or possibly the day after, but we'll see. I'm going to put this on now, and I will get back to you on the other side when ready for the seal. Hi, back again. Almost forgot to tell you, there is another circlip on that side as well. Stop that one coming out as well. So once you've knocked that one home, circlip in, other side in, circlip in. For some real reason it slipped my mind, but it's there anyway. I've put it in. I always double check everything 2 or 3 times anyway, or triple check. So that's in now. We've got seal to go in. Just checking my parts, my bits and bobs, my boggle. So there my weight. Oh, it's running around underneath it. Right, here we are. I've always used it. I believe there's good aftermarket bearings out there, but because I couldn't find the particular ones for what I needed at the time, I went to Genuine. And with Genuine, I suppose, they're the stuff that Kawasaki use, and not always they always say Genuine, and not always the best, but they're certainly not the worst, if you know what I mean. So I'm just going to tap this in so it's pretty much flush with the wheel, because you don't really have to go too far, because this sits in, you know, it sits just nicely there like that on the bearing. And when you assemble it all, let's say that's in there, this bit goes on that side with the speedo drive, which that finds its place. That lock goes in. Obviously the caliper, the fork, let's adjust this camera a little bit. Obviously the fork sits along there, but I say the speedo drive goes in, and to the side, comes out, and then you have a spacer that goes in, let's say there, and the other bit that goes on. It's like an Allen nut, if you want to call it that way, and that goes in, and then bearings like that. But what I will do when you assemble it onto the bike, I would put a bit of copper grease. I use this stuff on the shaft before you put it in, just a thin smear the shaft when you put it in, just so when if you do have to obviously take them off for new tires and that, it will come off a bit easier, a bit freer. And that's it. So pretty much I'm done here now. Just gonna put the other disc on, and job's done on this particular wheel, ready to go back on the bike. So I'll call that the end of my video, and speak to you next time. I've got a few other things to do in the pipeline. I've got a tank that whether I'll video it, but it's had rust, a little bit of surface rust in the tank, which ended up going around through all the carburetors. That's why I stripped the carburetors initially, around all the carburetors and the tank, and I'm going to flush. I've been advised by a couple of people, first of all, fill it up with fuel, slush it all around, give it a good swill, right to the brim if you can afford it, and then leave that overnight, drain it out, dispose of it correctly, and then white spirits. I have mentioned this before, got to do that at some point. And I've also got the new, not a new fuel tap, but a new fuel tap seal to put on and a fuel tap to put back on. I've just been putting those carburetors back on a little bit earlier, and I've been putting different fuel line on rather than what was there. It was like a fibre braided rubber fuel line, but the rubber fuel line itself is not particularly thick, and it does quite split quite easy, especially if it goes around bends. There was a couple of bends, so I replaced it with slightly thicker, same diameter but thicker fuel line. So hopefully that will last a bit longer. If you could really afford it, you could route it properly with braided and proper angles and stuff like that, but you know, it has to be pretty spot on when you do that. And I've done it with the oil cooler on the bike, on the drag bike, but I'm not doing it on this. Anyway, that's it. Speak to you again shortly. Goodbye.